Just when you thought it had a vehicle for every segment on the market in Australia, Toyota said, allow us to present the Corolla Cross. And just like that, we have another SUV in the Toyota lineup. Now, Australians love SUVs. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There's already a massive waiting list on things like RAV4, and that means Corolla Cross should be quite popular with Australian buyers. This is the top spec model. We're going to start with the cabin, and then of course we're going to take it for a drive. So let's take a closer look at the most expensive variant of the Toyota Corolla Cross. The Corolla Cross range is priced from $33,000 even before on-road costs, but the Atmos hybrid all-wheel drive on test is the top of the range model priced from $49,050 before on-road costs. Atmos exclusive features include 18-inch alloy wheels, a widescreen digital instrument cluster, leather trim, heated front seats, a power driver's seat, panoramic sunroof, hands-free power tailgate, JBL premium stereo and wireless phone charging. Features carried up from lower grades include LED headlights, power folding mirrors, a 10.5-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, satellite navigation and a rear-view camera, and a full suite of advanced safety technology. Powering price-leading petrol variants of the Corolla Cross is a 2-litre non-turbo 4-cylinder engine developing 126 kilowatts and 202 newton metres, coupled to a continuously variable automatic transmission and front-wheel drive. Meanwhile, front-wheel drive hybrid models combine a 112 kilowatt, 190 newton metre 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine with an 83 kilowatt and 206 newton metre electric motor for combined outputs of 146 kilowatts, the first 2-litre hybrid Toyota sold in Australia. All-wheel drive models add a 30 kilowatt electric motor on the rear axle and multi-link independent rear suspension to replace the standard torsion beam setup. When is a Corolla not a Corolla? When you jack it up and turn it into an SUV, it would seem, because when we speak about the Corolla hatch, boot space aside, we always say that the cabin has a bit of a TARDIS-like quality to it, and that means the exterior of the car is quite compact, but there's a lot of room inside. The issue that Toyota has with this Corolla Cross is that people expect an SUV to be spacious, have a lot of storage, and be comfortable and user-friendly. Now, Corolla Cross is comfortable, but as you can see in here, it's actually quite compact. You've got a small centre storage bin, small cup holders. You do get wireless charging in this top spec model for your smartphone and a receptacle to store that. I've also got the keys up there as well. But it's actually quite compact in here. And you'll see when we move into the second row that if you're in the driving seat and you're around about 6 foot or 6'1", it's going to be pretty tight behind that position in the second row. So you go into this SUV thinking that you might have the space and flexibility that you generally expect from an SUV. But I think the point needs to be made, if you want a larger cabin, if you want more interior flexibility, you really do need to look one step up in the Toyota range, and that's the RAV4. Now, let's just take a minute, let's just take a deep breath, and let's say thank you and praise be to the automotive gods, because Toyota has finally updated its infotainment system. And what that means is you get a massive big screen there in the center of the dashboard. It's practical, it's mounted really cleverly, it's right in your eye line so you don't have to go too far off the road. It's really easy to use, it's clear, and we really like it. We've tested that a lot over the last week or so. We really like it. However, it's not perfect. See these two switches here? Volume down, volume up. Give us a dial. Look at these dials here. If you just turn them, it's so much easier to adjust. We say it a lot, and you might think we're nitpicking, but when you're driving and you're doing 110 down the freeway and you want to adjust the volume, if you're not using the buttons on the steering wheel and you go here, you've got to take your eye off the road to try to work out what does what and the position of it, whereas if it's a big dial, really easy to use. Aside from that, this top spec model feels pretty premium. You've got heated seats, which I think is a really good addition. A lot of people like them. We get a lot more questions about them than we ever used to, but it's really nicely executed, good fit and finish, insulated, and good choice of materials. So first up, as I said, a little bit tight here behind my own driving position. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm uncomfortable, but I wouldn't want to sit here for 6 hours on a road trip, between major cities, for example, because my knees are up against that backrest there. I've got room under the seat for my feet though, so that's a positive. Another thing that we really like, in fact, there's a couple of things back here that we really like. The full-size sunroof, if you open that right up, it does open that sense of space back here. Doesn't feel like the roof's closing in. And maybe Toyota listened to us when we reviewed the CHR, which is a fantastic little SUV, but has a very, very high hip line and a sloping roof, so that in the second row you kind of feel like you're sitting like that. You can't really see out. There's not as much light coming in. This Corolla Cross is a lot more airy. There's a lot more light in the cabin, and you certainly don't feel like you're sitting in a dark space. We like the fact, and that's not my coffee, I'd never drink a coffee that big, but we like the fact, you're not getting this back, Lucas, either. I like the fact that there's a cup holder up there in the door. That makes a lot of sense because you're not reaching down into the bottom of the door pocket. So it's right there. Holds a coffee cup too, not just a bottle. Pretty sensible, pretty smart. Something that's strange to me, in this top spec model, you do get air vents back here, which is great. You get 2 USB-C ports, which is also handy for devices. But up front, you only get 1 USB-A input. That does seem a little bit weird to me. I guess, realistically, only the driver needs to be using their smartphone. If they're not wirelessly charging, they can plug directly in, but probably like an extra port up there in the front. Lastly, in the second row, we've got the backrest reclined as far back as it will go. You can move it a step forward if you like. Putting it back a little bit does give you a bit more headroom, so that adds to that sense of space. But I think the fact that we pointed out in the front row holds true here in the second, that if you need interior flexibility, if you need a lot of space in the cabin, certainly more space than the Corolla Cross has got, you really do need to step up a segment and look at the RAV4. So, crucial one for this segment, luggage space. Top spec Corolla Cross obviously gets an electric opening tailgate. If you're about my height though, this could be a forehead killer. Ask me how I know that. Just for context, the Corolla hatch has between 217 litres and 333 litres, and the Corolla sedan has 470 litres. The RAV4 has between 542 and 580 litres across the range, and in comparison to all of those, the Corolla Cross is anywhere from 380 litres to 425 litres, depending on the model. So I know literage doesn't make sense to all of you, but you can see that Corolla Cross sort of sits just over the halfway point between those two vehicles. This is all, or part thereof, of our camera gear, bags and equipment. If you want a yardstick, or more specifically an 80 centimetre stick, you can use this camera slider here. So that's 80 centimetres long, and that fits into the boot easily. And then if you have a look at it here, you've got plenty of room from side to side there, even right up to the top of the door opening. So it's quite a useful boot space. And if you fold the seats down, take the luggage cover out, you get a reasonably flat floor right through there. We like the fact that the floor is not right down deep so that you don't have to put things in. So for example, if you're putting a bag in, you don't have to reach over that and drop it right down. You just sort of put it basically back there. So it's actually quite flexible. The audio system with the subwoofer back here doesn't eat too much into space. You've got a funny little storage receptacle over here that I don't quite understand what you'd ever put in that, but it's there anyway. And you get an LED light, which is handy because if you've got the luggage cover across, it's nighttime, it's dark, you can actually see in there with that LED light without having to flip the luggage cover back. So it's pretty practical, it's pretty useful. I guess the highlight for us is that flat floor. Our test car is all-wheel drive, so it comes with a tyre repair kit instead of a full-size spare. Only front-wheel drive Corolla Cross models are available with a spare tyre. I don't love the term design language, but let's use it for the purposes of this discussion. Toyota's design language is interesting in that the brand often releases a new vehicle and everybody goes, oh, gee, it's a bit edgy, it's a bit sharp, I'm not sure. And then a year or two later, it starts to grow on you and everyone says, actually, I think it looks pretty good after all. Well, I think the Corolla Cross bucks that trend. I think this is a really stylish looking SUV from the get-go. Let us know what you think. First up, let's talk about fuel use, or specifically the lack thereof. The absolute worst we can get this Corolla Cross to do is 5.3 litres per 100, and that's in heavy stop-start traffic with the engine sitting around running and the air conditioning on in the sun while we set up all our video stuff that we're doing while we're testing. So we've averaged around 5.1 or 5.2 in general driving, and it's incredibly efficient. So that is a real strong point for those of you who spend all your time driving around town. The relationship between what the electric stuff does and the regular petrol engine is very good. It's very smooth when it transitions in and out of the two, and the gearbox works quite well also. Some of the points that we'd like to make here about the ride are that it's quite firm in this top spec model. It's not uncomfortable, and I need to make that point. So it's not something you get in and go, oh yeah, that's too stiff. But it is firm, so you do feel small bumps. If you run over cat's eyes on the road or something, you'll feel them, but then also it's quite wafty over bigger bumps as well, so it doesn't really isolate either particularly well. Having said that, it's not dramatically uncomfortable, but you do need to factor that in and take it into account. Toyota's been doing hybrid drivetrains for quite some time now. Do you reckon they're pretty good at it? Yes, absolutely. The transition between electric power and switching over to the petrol engine is almost seamless, and it's a really, really smooth driving experience no matter what you're doing. The other point to make, and a real strong point of this segment, is obviously seating position and visibility. A lot of people talk about the fact that they want an SUV because you're sitting up higher, you can see more out in front of you. That's very much the case with the Corolla Cross, and if you're thinking of moving from a Corolla or any small hatch up to a small SUV like the Corolla Cross, that's going to be a benefit for you. So you can get really good visibility, and it's really comfortable here in the driver's seat or the passenger seat for that matter. And lastly, on the cabin, the insulation in here is excellent. It's very, very quiet, aided by the fact that the engine and the driveline is quite smooth and refined, but it's quiet, it's insulated, and this is a really, really good place to spend some time on a longer road trip. You don't get that debilitating sense of road noise that's actually more tiring than you might have thought. This is a fantastic cabin if you're spending a few hours behind the wheel. As good as this top spec Atmos is, we actually think the value pick of the range and the smart way to spend your money if you're buying a Corolla Cross is further down the pricing spectrum. So the two-wheel drive models, one or two steps up from the base, that's probably the smartest way to get yourself into a Corolla Cross. This one looks fantastic, and as I said, it is a really good thing, although the large wheels, low profile tyres mean that you do feel road imperfections, and you need to keep in mind as well, and this is true across the whole Corolla Cross range, there's limited space in that second row, but there is quite a lot of luggage space, so it's a bit of a trade-off there depending on what you need. Overall though, impressive vehicle and an impressive entrant in this segment by Toyota. As always, let us know what you think in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like if you've enjoyed the video. Click on subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our latest video content, and the full review of the Toyota Corolla Cross Atmos, that's at Drive.com.au.